Hi, Joe here. Well, welcome to this session today where I just want to talk quickly about the review of your expenses. That review that should be done at least every quarter. I say at least because, well, more often than that is probably too often when you're in a small business, and less frequent than that. And there's a chances that your expenses are running away with themselves and a lot higher than perhaps they need to be. So, can you answer this question? Do you know how much it costs to run your business? I'll put it another way. How much money do you need to cover your expenses each and every month? Seemingly fairly innocuous questions, but you know what? People do struggle to answer. Now, for me, it's £350, which is a super low amount. I've got super frugal with my expenses, and it excludes things like coaching that I'll do periodically. Here I'm talking about the software and the support and the subscription. So all the things that I need to keep my business ticking over. But I only got it down to such a low amount by continually reviewing my expenses and just ascertaining if the expenses were right for my business. Was I still using what I was subscribing to? And everything on my list, none of them I can do without. So I've been really frugal and cut that down to a low amount. And you know what? It doesn't matter how much you're earning in business, you should be doing that and just trimming those expenses down to the amount that you absolutely need. Now, I'm fortunate, yes, an online coaching business, it can be run fairly cheaply. I know a lot of other people are just not going to be able to get it that low, but it's going to be as low as possible for you. And I know that before I work with my clients, that they actually can't answer the questions. You know, those questions that I asked a moment ago, how much does it cost to run your business? But if you are in business, then this is something that you must know to have absolutely any chance of being in control of your finances. And if you are in business for yourself, you need to be in control of your finances. You need to get all this money stuff sorted out. It's not just about being in business to deliver your service and then people say, well, I'm concentrating on sales and marketing. If you're a small business owner, you need to wear every hat, and you cannot exclude the chief financial officer's hat. So one of the ways that we do this is by reviewing expenses. Yes, keeping an eye on sales, and ultimately it's about profit. Now, profit can be whether you're thinking in traditional ways, and by traditional ways, I'm talking about what accountants, how they calculate the profit, and that's just sales minus expenses equals profit. So, yes, you need money coming in. Profit is the amount you must have a goal for that, because you must know how much you need to be able to take out of your business each and every month. And then expenses is the other part of the equation. Now, profit is determined by how much we need to live that lifestyle and to take us to the next level. So that's the goal. We concentrate by our marketing efforts and other efforts on our sales and getting that money flowing in. But we can't ignore expenses. It's a simple equation. Sales minus expenses equals profit. And you must give weight to each of those elements. You can't just ignore one of them. Or you do, well, you can, but you do so at your own peril. Even the profit first way of looking at things, and by profit first, that's a more traditional way. A lot of people will have read Profit First by Mike Mikowicz. If you haven't read it, it's something that it's a book that should be on your reading list. So go and check it out on Amazon. And then he talks about a more modern way of viewing that traditional equation, and it's just swapped around a little bit to put the emphasis with profit. So sales minus profit equals expenses. In other words, we're not just having, as business owners, we're not just taking out of our business what's left at the end of the day. So we know how much is coming in, we know how much we need to take out of the business, and what is left is what we've got to spend on expenses. Now, if your expenses are already too high, then you've still got the same problem. Expenses is still part of the equation. You really do need to know this, how much it costs to run your business, however, whichever way it is that you are looking at this calculation in your business. Now, you might be sat there and think, well, I don't get involved in this kind of calculation. But as a business owner, you need to, even in just very simplistic terms of how much money you've made each month, knowing what your sales are, knowing what your expenses are, and knowing what your profit is. They are the basics when it comes to dealing with your business finances and taking control of your money. If not, it's like, why are you in business for yourself? That's a question that maybe you need to be thinking about, because this is, the CFO hat is not one that you can ignore, or you ignore at your peril. So expenses themselves, well, there's different kinds of expenses in that mix, and there I'm not just talking about the different headings of things like telephone costs and subscriptions. I'm just talking there about the ongoing running costs. So those are the things that you absolutely need to run your business each and every month. And then you've got your other budgeted expenses, and that's your total expenses. So your other budgeted expenses, well, you may not even have a budget, but that's a separate discussion. Here I'm talking about having a review on those ongoing running costs, because they're a significant part of that equation too. And they're important, even if they're fairly low amount, because some months you might decide you don't want to do much work. You might need to take time off. You might become ill. There are a whole host of reasons why you might not be able to generate any income in a month. So you need to make sure that you're running a lean ship, and those ongoing running costs are as lean as they can be for when the worst happens, when times are tough for whatever reason. And obviously, like I've already mentioned, expenses has a direct impact on how much profit that you have available. And that's the holy grail when you're a small business owner. When you're an employee, you're concerned with what is your salary. When you're a business owner, you're concerned with how much profit you make. So even if the element, going back to expenses, even if it's a low amount and you have high income levels, this is vital information that every business owner needs to know. Earning more money, and as you keep up leveling and get to the next income bracket, it doesn't necessarily mean that you have to spend more. I see this, and I've seen it over the last 20, 30 years. Being an accountant, I can see as people start to make more money, they soon spend more. As soon as they get that first influx of money, it's like, well, they can upgrade their car, they can start, I know that's a personal expense, but again, your business and personal finances, whilst we keep them separate, when you're a small business owner, actually they are still quite intertwined. But people will start spending on all sorts of things, and then they'll start, spending more on, £97 courses here and all these things that then add up. And so whether it's spending in your business or spending personally, it's almost like, well, I've earned more money, I've got a free ticket to spend more. Well, of course you can spend more. It's your money. But if you're wanting to build a solid wealth foundation, a solid money foundation, to be able to grow your business and just achieve that level of financial freedom, instead of having to keep earning money month in, month out for the rest of your life, then building that solid foundation is something where you need to be in control of your expenses. So just spending more because you're earning more is not the right money mindset. Now, I'm not saying, of course, that you won't spend more, but it doesn't mean that you have to just because you're earning it. It doesn't mean that you should give yourself permission to be frivolous with how you spend your money. Now, I don't pay for anything that I don't use regularly. And I know people who are super wealthy and they are just the same. It is one of the attributes that I see in a lot of wealthy people. They are often quite frugal. They're often paying out a lot of money, but they're not paying for anything that they don't use regularly and they don't absolutely need. And when you're trying to build wealth, this is an important mindset to get into. And I invite you to do the same. If, of course, you're after something like financial freedom or building wealth, rather than just having money come to you each and every month and continually having to work for it in that way. So as I'm recording this Finance Friday snippet, we are actually in the middle of month 3 of the first quarter of 2021, which is also the last quarter for those of us who have a 31st of March accounting year end, which is the end of the tax year, the financial year for us here in the UK. So now is an opportune time to review your ongoing costs, also review your budget or create a budget for the next financial year, but certainly review your ongoing costs and make sure that there's nothing in there that shouldn't be, that can't be swapped out maybe for something cheaper or even be cancelled. So, if you do this exercise, and I encourage you to do so, and then I'd love to know if you have any surprises when you do the review. People are often surprised. Sometimes it's good because they're not spending perhaps as much as they thought, or good because they can actually find loads of things that they can cancel and therefore have more money in their pocket. Sometimes it's some quite nasty shocks, I would say, as to actually how much money their business is actually leaking each and every month, because this is ongoing costs. So this is not just little bits of frivolous expenditure from time to time. This is stuff that's just leaking out of your business continually each and every month until you decide to put a stop on it. And then one final point is, if you have done this kind of review before and you've not done it in the last 90 to 100 days, then I do invite you to do it again. So that's it from me. Until next time.